Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for joining this session. Um, we will be talking about how to build enterprises with design thinking. But before we dive right into this very insightful conversation with Naveen, I would like to talk a little bit about And Academy. I'm sure some of you know about And, some of our learners have also joined us, but people who are new to this and who have joined us for the session, for us, joined us for the session for the first time, I would like to talk a little bit about And. Um, so, And, oh, oops. An Academy is the brainchild of Dr. Jitin Chadda, who's also the founder and CEO of IIAD, which is the Indian Institute of Art and Design, a brick and mortar design school based out of New Delhi. IIAD has been around for over a decade now and has been imparting design education for more than a decade. You find degree courses in IIAD, but when COVID hit, there was suddenly a need to sort of address the question of imparting design education online. And through that model of um, learning and disseminating information about design came about An Academy. So this is a model which was tried and tested over 2 years with degree students of design, and then An Academy came about. So and actually comes from that pedigree of IIAD. But what is the difference between IIAD and AND? In IIAD, you will get your degree courses, your regular BDes and MDes, etc. But at AND, we provide professional short courses in the domains of graphic, interior, and UI UX. Most of these courses are also part-time. We have one full-time course in graphic design. Other than that, all of these courses are part-time. These are also built for people that do not have the time to commit to a full-time course or have any commitments during the day. So, say working professionals, people enrolled in full-time grad degrees, homemakers, or primary caregivers for other people. So these courses are designed for people that can only commit some certain amount of hours in a day to the courses and learning. Um, I've already spoken about the pedigree of IIAD. And all of our courses are also delivered online in a live interactive manner. So today we'll be talking in a webinar session where Naveen will be talking about his expertise and his topic, and you will be sort of absorbing information. But this is not how our classes happen. Our classes happen in a very interactive format. So you're asked a question, you're asked to contribute to the conversation in the class, you're asked to uh, uh, sort of critique each other's work. So everything that you sort of find in a design studio, you will find that in AND, but in an online manner. And we rely heavily on tech and human support to achieve this sort of environment, this to simulate this environment of a design studio online. All of our courses are also created and designed by people that are practicing designers. So you get very relevant knowledge and also delivered by people who are practicing designers and academicians. So you get very relevant, up-to-date knowledge about the design industry, what is working, what is not working. So yeah. Uh, we also focus a lot on design fundamentals and principles over just software learning. So you do get to learn relevant softwares for your domain. So your Photoshops and the Figmas and the After Effects and AutoCADs of the world, you do get to learn those definitely. But what is it that you do with those? What will you design, how to think like a designer, how to use fundamentals of design to sort of break down a design brief and apply those fundamentals to solve problems. That is what we focus on primarily at And. All of these curriculum are also designed in a way that they have projects in between. So you learn something and then you apply that learning in a project. So we learn by doing. You also learn with mentor feedback and peer feedback. So you have one-on-one critique sessions with mentors and your peers. And all of these projects then sort of culminate into your portfolio. And we have a lot of faith in what we do. So we offer you job guarantee on select courses also. These are given that you also meet your portfolio submission attendance criteria. So definitely in equal amount of effort is also required from your end. So these are rigorous, intensive courses, but designed for people that want to sort of learn online and part-time. We've been around for 3 years. We've had 1,200 plus learners. We have had we have a body of 50 plus mentors with us, and we're rated 4.6 on Google. So if any of you are wanting to learn design with us, you can check us out. With that, I will move on to the conversation that we're having today. Naveen is a user experience leader and strategist with 15 years of experience in shaping best-in-class digital product experiences. With a customer-focused, insights-driven approach, he brings deep expertise in research, strategy, product design, and design management. Passionate about emerging tech and the human technology interface, Naveen designs solutions that connect with audiences at key moments in their journey. He has led experienced design teams using collaborative and entrepreneurial methods, drawing on quantitative and qualitative insights, competitive data analytics, and the power of storytelling to define product strategy and drive innovation across diverse business domains. Curious, meticulous, and enthusiastic, Naveen thrives on learning, creating, and building meaningful experiences that inspire impact. With that, I will hand it over to Naveen.
Thank you. Thank you, Subhangi. Can you hear me clearly?
Guys, you can use the chat box to answer Naveen's questions. But yeah, we can hear you, Naveen. No
All right,
problem.
cool. Thanks for the intro, Subhangi. So the 15 has become 18 now. I feel a little old. So a little bit about me, like I'm basically from Tamil Nadu. So I spent a lot of my time in financial services industry, obviously in design world. So half my career I spent in India and half my career in New York in Wall Street. And then last year I moved to Bangalore, and I've been working in IBM for last 1 year. I'm heading the overall design studio for IBM Cloud in India. I'm also the global functional manager for the networking services of IBM Cloud. That's a little bit about me. So that's the reason I thought I will take some session about enterprise design thinking, since I come from that background. So I spent a lot of time with a huge financial services industry, which is a big enterprise, how we design and how we scale up to the whole services. The same thing we are trying to follow in IBM as well. IBM Cloud is huge. It's not a siloed product. It has multiple products, and how do we build that product and how do we scale it up? I thought I would give a small session about that. With that, I'll share my screen. Hope you all can see my screen in a minute. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is the topic. Yeah. Thank you. So it's about enterprise transformation through design thinking. I would say there are a lot of great ideas. Everyone has phenomenal ideas. Or if you are in a group of people, out of the group, at least few ideas comes out. So, but does the idea translate to execution? We might not know that, right? So the true success always comes from deep alignment across teams. Since I'm talking purely from a B2B standpoint, there is a lot of ideas that comes out, but always the success is based on how we are aligning between multiple teams. So that's something you will hear from me across this presentation. There are three teams that keep coming back, right? One is the design team, one is a product team, one is the engineering team. How these three teams come together to build a beautiful product. It's not just a three teams, there are multiple stakeholders, but these three teams play a critical role. So this session will also dive into how design is more than visuals. So it's about a mindset, it's about a strategy. The reason I'm mentioning about risk here is that I'm talking more about B2B. So we don't want to have risk. That way we end up losing customers or our clients. At the same time, how can we drive clarity with our stakeholders, with our own peers, and with our customers or clients? So we'll also see how enterprise applies design thinking at scale. So I'm talking about scale in the sense we have 100 designers. So if you take any enterprise, like or GCP or like Azure or AWS, they have hundreds and 300s of designers. How the designers can have a consistent design across. At the same time, they are dealing with multiple products, and these multiple products are part of a huge ecosystem or a platform. How can we scale the design, right? That's how we are going to discuss here. And why does best experience always happen? As I said, these three big teams come together from the start, not something one separately working or one other team is siloed working in the silos. So I hope this talk will inspire a new approach to the teamwork or shared ownership, and also how we can build products which users truly love. All right, before going to this main content of enterprise design thinking, I want to talk about three things. So this is something I learned from my previous company's head of design, who doesn't matter whether it's a CEO or like a upline or like a first line manager or even to any engineers, he keeps repeating three things. So that gets etched into their mind, and that gets become a practice, right? So three things about design. So the first thing is he keeps telling that design is a method that creates value. So that kind of resonated very well with me. So I started using these three methods in my everyday. Whether I talk about enterprise design or whether I talk about visual design or like interaction or general design, I try to start with these three things so that we get a context to what we're talking about. There are people who might not come up with a proper idea of design. So this is the first thing what I keep telling is that so design is a method, it's not a deliverable. So it's a thing you get at the end. It's not a thing you get at the end. It's a process. So it's a skill, it's a deliverable, it's a measurement, right? These all things that come together to create design. So it's a kind of way of working. It's a mindset, it's a strategy, right? So to the right, we have this beautiful graph, which from McKinsey, which says showing the business value that how you can quantify against company that invest and do well in design, right? So we also have this DMI value index result, which says that strong design management, that is management, that is design is reporting directly to the upper man, which is the senior management, the CEOs or the CPOs, achieve more than 200% higher returns in their index benchmark. So that's the reason we keep repeating is design is the method that creates value. This is especially for people who don't think or who don't understand design beyond the idea of font and colors. Second thing is designers research. So if you're not doing research, you are not really doing design. It's in software, not just on the page, right? It's how you move through the pages to accomplish the goal. So when you're talking about goals, it means that you need to understand the person whose goal it is, right? And their frustrations in trying to solve it. So if you're just doing a design on the surface, it's not really design that I'm talking about, right? It's about understanding technical requirements, good practice in design. And it's also about understanding the behavior. So the example you see here, so if you're a young audience, you might not know how we used to watch TV series long ago, which when I'm talking about 20 years ago. So the whole concept of binge watching happened like 10, 15 years back. So that is when like people started watching the whole series in a whole night, like it's kind of binge watching, right? So when Netflix started, they didn't have the same interface what we have now, right? So if you look closely here, there is one particular part of the design that is definitely behavioral, right? So no one told that they need to have the skip intro. So this whole concept of binge watching came where people see all 10 episodes or eight episodes at a stretch. So they keep repeating the end credits or the intro scene again and again, right? So over a course of time, people understood, or the designer, one designer, one researcher understood that's a pattern happening. So how can we make the experience better? So that can be skip intro. So this is not part of the initial design requirement or technical requirement where they wanted a skip intro. So this is a small experience which happened over a time, which happened based on behavior, based on research. So that's why it is very, very critical to have research in your whole playbook. The last thing, it might be a little surprising to put in the word this way, design is cheap. The reason we say design is cheap is that it is the businesses, like the big business or even startups, right? They make a lot of assumptions, right? So the software development is really, really expensive. So that way it is done. The product specifications are built, the technical specifications are built, and then it comes to design. So the design specifications are built. And then when we develop, then when we test, and then when we release, we find something is wrong. Now we have to go all the way back to the beginning and try to fix it and make it better, which is so, so expensive. So the way we make a design cheapest by having design as the most strategic component of the business requirement. So right after you understand what you're building, what the business is trying to do, you quickly make some design hypothesis of a solution that would solve the problem, right? And then you test it, iterate it, make some changes, you validate it, and then you go to the development. That way, you do all those things at the beginning, you understand where you're going wrong, or if you're doing the right thing, and then you go for the development. So there is a small strip at the top you see from IBM. So the amount of money you spend, and put it in the X, right? So when you make changes during the design and architecture, the amount of money you're spending is 1x. So during the implementation stage, if you're making changes, it's going to cost you 5x. During the testing stage, it's 10x. When it is beta testing, right, you are spending 15x to make a small change for in a whole product. And after post-release, after GA, if you are making some changes to your product, it's going to cost you 30x. So the right place where you can make change if you want to be in the cost reduction is 1x, which is during the design and architecture stage. So that's the reason I put it like design is always cheap. So it's the easiest way you can fail. So those are three things I keep repeating, like keep in your mind, like design is a method, not a deliverable. There is no design without research, and design is the cheapest way to be wrong. So I know it is not very, very relevant to the topic we're going to talk, but when we talk about design as a whole, this is really, really critical. How we understand or how we articulate things to our upper management or senior management or some chief product officer. What is a design, right? With that, I'll go into the agenda for today. So we'll talk about three things. One is how do we make a product that our customers really love? And how do we adopt design thinking practices in large organizations? And how can we make excellent user experiences? I start with this, the same point which I put in my first slide. So ideas are easy, but as ideas are easy, the alignments are really, really, really hard. So in reality, we see most products failure aren't due to lack of creativity. So they happen because teams aren't aligned on what problem to solve and for whom we are solving and why it really matters. So when you go into meetings, there are a lot of opinions, but there comes no clarity, right? We go to too many meetings, we don't get enough momentum. So you can take an example of Kodak, right? So they had their first digital camera as early as 1975, but they didn't have the right alignment from the upper management or the people who's ideating. They stick to their old school films, and somehow the whole company failed. And there came like other companies like Nikon, Canon, like they utilized adoption and the DSLR was formed. And that's the whole story, right? So I keep repeating. So the great ideas are everywhere. The true success comes from the deep alignment. Alignment is not easy, like so that is something we will go through this course, how we bring this alignment, and how the enterprise design thinking, which is a framework, right, which is kind of a playbook, how that helps in creating that alignment across things. One other thing we'll be seeing is how, as a designers, we bring the human-centered outcomes, which requires empathy for the people you serve, right? So because most of the time, we are not just interested only in outcome. So the business needs outcome, right? What is the measurable outcome we are delivering? But we as designers, so we want the outcome that help the people who's going to use the software or the application or the platform, whatever it is, right? So this requires us to understand the perspectives of the people whose future we are helping to shape, right? So that's very, very critical. And other thing we'll be talking about is like when you're solving complex problems. So I'm talking about like huge financial application or like huge e-commerce, or like it could be even a simple problem. But when it is a complex, every simple problem becomes complex with too many people involved. But again, we need to be ensuring that there is diverse perspective coming. And we also need to have there is an empowered team, right? So without empowerment, things doesn't go as fast as we expected. With that, I say the transformation is always a group exercise. It's when I'm that's the whole topic, right? How we do transformation with enterprise design thinking, which is not a siloed act; it's a group exercise. With that, I get into the enterprise design thinking. It's so important that this methodology is developed. I mean, you might have learned about design thinking in multiple places, like each company or each organization or each academic can have different form of design thinking. So the Stanford has a different way of doing it, or you can learn about the double diamond process, right? So here we follow something little different, which worked for us, and it is still working for us. And we have a quantifiable number which says that it is really working. So that's the reason I put some numbers here. So this is the numbers which is coming from Forrester Research, which did the research with IBM, and they found out the, the products which is following or judiciously following the design thinking methodology is 2x faster to market, right? They bring 300% return on investment, and there is like 75% increase in team efficiency, right? So we kind of added this as part of our Harvard Business School. So IBM design thinking methodology has been added to it, and if you look at it, it produces at least 2.1 million cost per major project, right? Like when I'm talking about major projects, IBM Cloud like produces like at least 10 major products every year. So we're talking about that much millions in savings. So it also increases the profit like to 1.1 million per project. So that's the numbers, which is really, really important for the business, why we follow this process, why it is critical. From our standpoint, we may be advocating for our users, right? We want to sit at the table, and it's not about sitting at the table where decisions are made. We are the advocate for the users, right? When all the other decisions are making, like architecture or like technical assumptions or like business goals, we sit at the table to bring the users as one of the important stakeholders, right? So to make sure that the business understands the importance of it, these numbers are very critical. So this is something, the framework we follow. This is something I will be talking about in the next 15 minutes. The framework is called as enterprise design thinking. So three important things, which is the principles, the loop, and the keys. So what's the principle? The principle is how we see the problems and solution, which is an ongoing conversation. It's not that I have a defined problem, I have a defined solution. So this is like a keeps on like a defined ongoing conversation. How we keep on looking at the user outcomes, how we can restlessly reinvent things, how we bring diverse team with diverse perspectives. So that's something we go in deep. And then we go to the loop. It is understanding, or it's like how we observe things, how do we reflect it, and how do you start making things, right? So understand the present and envision the future in a continuous cycle, right? The last thing is the keys. Keys is a place where we bring the alignment. So we create a health statement. So we'll go through what is a health statement, how we create a health statement. We do playbacks. Playbacks are nothing but more like a readouts or like a presentation made to all the stakeholders so that every stakeholder is in the same page. And then we bring the sponsor users, which is like before even we release the product to the market, we bring some real users and test it with them or co-create with them, and we'll see how we do that process, right? Three things, the principles, the loop, the keys. We'll start with the principles. So principle frames the way we see the problems, right? So three important things as parts of principles. One is a focus on the user outcomes. How do we bring focus more on the user outcomes, while the other teams, the technical teams, like the product teams or engineering teams, focus on their one part, like the product teams want more adoption or they want to bring the business to the market, or the engineering team look at the technical limitations or like the capabilities. So we focus on the user outcomes. And then how do we bring multidisciplinary teams and how do we do our restless integration, right? So if you look at it, this is the focus on the user outcomes. So our users determine the value we deliver, right? So we make our users as our North Star, right? So they are the part of our core methodology or process. So they are the premise for every actions that we are taking here. So we usually measure our success based on the value that we bring to them. For example, let's say we are building an application. So if the user sees the value, there is going to be like keep on returning users, and that's going to be word of mouth or something. That's how the product is built. So we make sure that we ensure or we measure our success based on the value we bring to them, right? So there are a very, very important thing. When as a designer, when we start designing, we always think that we have to make it perfect, right? So if you look at it, nothing is invented and perfected at the same time. Look at how the way TV is invented, or like how electric bulb, right? It is not perfect at the time of invention. So it's an evolution. It's keep on reinventing things. So earlier TVs are like bulky. Now it is like thin as a paper, right? So that's how we keep innovating or keep reinventing, right? So that's very, very important. So treat everything as a prototype. So we pursue perfection with the humility of knowing that nothing is actually perfect. So what we see now, we might think that might be perfect, but that's not the truth. In 1 year or in 6 months, that can change. The perfection what we see today might not be a perfection in 6 months. So have that mindset. That's very, very critical. So anything you do is always a prototype that can be changed based on the feedback you receive or based on the behavior you see. You can keep on reinventing things. And the last thing is that you never solve a complex problem alone. Don't work silos, right? To move quickly, you need a team that can share an insight or an idea, then quickly reject or commit to it. They need to be able to collaborate in real time, right? We all have to collaborate. So not as a link in a chain of a sequential interactions. That's how it's important. So, which means that this sometimes requires a shift in mindset because a lot of times we end up working silos. So it means that it requires empathy not only with our users, but with each other, with our stakeholders, with our peers, with our project counterparts, with everyone. It requires trust, with respect, and respect amongst the whole team. And it requires you to put the need of a team above your own. So you cannot put your ego first, or you cannot put your thoughts first. Put your team first. So that's how you solve the problem. Next, we talk about the loop. So the loop is driving us to understand the present, where we are, the status quo, and envision the future. It's a continuous cycle of observing, reflecting, and how do we make things. So it drives us to understand the present and how we can envision how the future will look like, so that it helps us to build our success and learn from our failures along the way. So when taken to heart, the loop keeps us moving forward despite a lot of uncertainties that the future may hold, right? So the first step here is how do we observe our world or our users' world, right? So try to get to know your users, build empathy with them, figure out what makes them tick, right? That's very, very critical. Try to uncover their needs, figure out how the users measure success, look for opportunity to improve their experiences. That's very, very critical. And then learn the landscape, right? Find wisdom and cautionary tales from competitors, collaborators, learn some of your case studies. So try to understand your landscape, where you're building things, right? So now test your ideas. So validate or invalidate your ideas by putting them to a user hands, to your stakeholders, your sponsor users, right? And always keep listening for the feedback. So this is the place where you observe. So when you observe, make sure to set aside your assumptions and take it without judgment. That's very important. So once you go with a judgment, you will not be able to make much changes, right? You go in a rigid mindset, you cannot shake it. So go a little bit fluid. So this is about discovering what the user's world is objectively like, right? Not about seeking validation for your existing ideas. It's about discovering a lot of things. So next step is how do you reflect ideas? So reflecting helps us to align our various points of view. So very important thing is like find your common ground. You get to know your team members as people, not just co-workers. So try to uncover insights, synthesize your data, what you know, and find out hidden wisdom in this data, right? So data is just data. So until you process it, it doesn't become an information. So once you process the data, synthesize the data, it becomes information, which can be insightful, which can provide us all the hidden wisdom. Now, other thing is like try to align with your team, get everyone on the same page. Now, always plan ahead. So decide on what is your next move, what's your next step. So commit to an idea, take another loop, right? Now you go to a next loop. So that's how you keep on reflecting what we learned during the observing process. Now, the last one is how do you make, right? Making gives a concrete form to abstract ideas. So now you, during the observation and reflection, you got the ideas. Now make, right? So communicate the concepts. Like a picture is always a word, 1,000 words. Try to draw pictures. So don't tell people your ideas, show them your ideas, right? Or explore your ideas, like think with your hands. find out what works, what doesn't work, uh, do some prototypes. So this is where the possibilities of prototypes comes in. So validate your ideas by simulating the experience you want to deliver. And now last thing is drive outcomes. The only way to see outcome is to make it happen, right? So that's where the prototype plays an important part. So that makes the loop. So you keep the loop again and again, right? You observe, you reflect, you make. Get the feedback. You observe. So that's the reason we put the name as a loop. So you kind of doing it again and again to ensure that you are on the right page. The last thing is keys, which aligns us across complex efforts, which means that we start with a hill statement, which is nothing but if you don't know what you're going, where you're going, you might not get there, right? So write a statement. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Whom you're solving for? What is the wow moment you're going to create for the users? So here's actually frames a formula for problem in terms of intended outcomes. So not for a specific implementation. So they give teams a creative space. They need to come to the breakthrough ideas without the need for detailed requirements, right? So that's how the kill statements is very critical when you start the project. It's more like your goals, what you're trying to do. Playback. So once you have something concrete, you have a prototype, or you have designed the screens, or you are there, now it's important you do the playback. Playback is the readout to the bigger audience, to all the stakeholders, uh, which helps everybody stay aligned. So not everybody has a time in the loop on every project, right? So once you are done the loop, if you're a project stakeholder, it can seem that the team is drifting, of course, right? Then if you're a team member, it seems like this stakeholders are out of touch. So now the playbacks plays an important role where you bring all of them together and bringing them to the loop. So making sure that they are safe, they are an inclusive space for everyone to understand your voice and work or get their feedback, put everyone the equal footing. That is playback. Make sure that everybody is aligned, everybody's feedback is being received. Last is sponsor users, which is like actual users. We might not have them in our company. We might not have them as your peers. We might not have them as your stakeholders. But who is your actual users? Try to onboard them. So there are multiple ways we use the sponsor users. We recruit those users and try to validate your hypothesis. Right? If you are not piloting, you'll never know what it's like to land an airliner. Right? So that's the same thing. Sponsor users or users, or might be even potential users that bring lived experience or domain expertise to the team. So there's sometimes active participants who you might be working alongside. So when we work along with them, that's what we call as co-create, right? So we create along with our users to understand their problem and solve it. So that's about the big things, the principle, the loop, the keys. That's kind of the process we follow, right? So with that, why do you follow it? Is it really important that we follow, right? But following this for quite some time, we got some measurable results. So that's why it is very important. We follow it religiously, like not just like IBM Cloud. I'm talking about the whole IBM. IBM is like a 400,000 people. All the projects they do, all the applications they do, all the softwares they follow this enterprise design thinking methodology because we found there is a measurable result for it, right? If you look at here, I would say the numbers are like staggering. Like, so it reduces design time by 75%. After the development and testing time by 30%, 33%. So help them go to market 2x time faster, right? So that's the ROI I'm talking about. So it's a 300% return on investment. You will be leading the industry. So this is the Forrester Consulting result from 2018, and there is a new report coming from McKinsey, which has a better number than this, right? So that's the reason we follow this judiciously. How do we do this? We have a toolkit. I mean, this is just a very high level toolkit. I'm putting it here, like how to some guidance to how on your design thinking skills, right? So the loop or the principle or the keys is very abstract. So we actually do it in real time. How do we do this? We need to have this toolkit. So there are some examples I put here, and we have a proper documentation of how exactly is done. Talk about like the feedback grid. How do we get feedback from our stakeholders or from our users, from our team members? So we have a grid where we follow that. Then we follow a storyboard. Then we have need statement, hopes and fears. This is just a part of it. We have a lot of toolkit. but this is an example I'm giving you, like how we follow toolkits. At the end, I'll close this part of this session. I mean, not the whole session, but saying that as a designer, it's not about having empathy for our users alone. Sometimes you have the empathy for each other, your coworkers, your as I mentioned, your coworkers don't treat us as coworkers. They are people. They have their own ideology, their thought process, their constructs. So have empathy for each other, even for the technical team, the product management team, your stakeholders, could be anyone, so that you bring in the alignment. Now, the last part of this session, which is going to be the making excellent user experience. Now that we learned about enterprise design thinking, now we need to know how we implement it, how it scales, right? So let's deep into how designers work and why there is a need to account for time, right? Time is critical. I'll start with this. As you see here, there is a lot of conversation happening when a project starts with the business, with the stakeholders, everyone. We are the advocate for the end users, no matter what, right? So user experience encompasses like all aspects of the end user interaction in the company, its services, its products. So it's never a siloed one, right? So user experience is not limited to what user does on the interface. For example, let's take Amazon. If the user prefers to shop at Amazon, might be not because of the app experience alone, right? But because of the delivery, because of the customer service resolution, because of the range of catalog they have, it might be because of easy return policies. And these experiences exist because the company has kept their focus on eliminating the friction points for the users. And that's where we play a critical role. That's where designers can add value to the expertise they bring and the toolkits they follow, right? So as I put here, so we represent the user in the room where decisions are made. So first thing, in a company where there's no design maturity, getting a table, getting a chair on the table where the decisions are made is important. But once we have a chair, it's important that we represent the user in the room when that decisions are made. So again, next point is that build experiences that user need, not necessarily what they ask for. I mean, the same example which I tell everyone is like when Ford built a car, he didn't ask the user. If he asked the user, they'll be asking for they need a faster horse. But the core problem is people want to move from point A to point B. So that's how we saw the problem and the car is invented, right? So sometimes we have to do that as well. So if you look at here, this is how a journey works, right? So users always don't consume our products in silos. So like experience, like talked in the previous slide. So no point in designing them in silos, right? So part of designer role is always to zoom out and have a bird eye view, design for journeys that user would take. So like molecules are made of atoms, user journeys are composed of products. So this is like an example of a journey in IBM Cloud or any cloud, right? Take you have foundation. Out of those 4 or 5 products, the user might be going to repeat products. From that, they go to the security protocols. They go to compute. They might be doing a lot of compute. That's how they came here for. But do the compute, they have to go through the foundation and security. And when they are doing compute, they might have to do some network, right? Networking services. And while doing networking services, they might have to put their data in some storage or databases. And they have to include some workloads. So if you look at just a compute as a product the user is using, the product may fail because we have to look at the whole journey, right? That's very, very critical. So driving the business growth, by making user journeys easier to consume, not just a single product. The product might be elegant, might be beautiful, have a beautiful experience, but if the journey is not that really great, then the people might not come back again. So we have to focus on that as well. For that to happen, we follow the 4-stage process. So that is the kickstart process, the discovery process, the solution, production. You might have learned it in a different way. These tools where we talk about empathize, define, ideate, testing, right? So here we call it as 4 stages where we kickstart. So you have an idea. So how does this work, right? That's where you do the kickstarting. And then the discover stage is where you understand the users, where you define the problem, you align on the pills. Then we come to the solution where we try to ideate, test, iterate, share with stakeholders for the solution, do a playback, and get to the proper solution part. Last is important production. Most of the time we end up our part from solutioning. The moment we don't go to the production part, the product is not that optimal. So we have to make sure that we are involved in the production stage as well. Where we scope the work, we might build it, we might have to see how we measure the success. I'll go through the process here, the kickstart, where we do a lot of things like UX audit, competitive analysis, stakeholder map, kickstart payback, all the toolkits you see, right? This is a phase where you get to a lay of the land you are going to trade into, right? Who's the team? Who are all the key players? What is the idea? What is the competition doing? How is our current experience performing, right? So you might have to look at some of the Google Analytics or Amplitude data or some of the WhatsApp feedback. That's where this whole process is about. And then comes the discovery stage. Here we walk in with an open mind, broad strokes, understand the user problems, leads to problem definition, aligning on the hills. At this stage, we could have a research team involved in scope requirements, further expertise, right? Things we do here is like user interviews or synthesize the findings. We can do storyboarding. We'll do an access journey map. We do the research readouts. A lot can happen. Like all the toolkits you see here is how it's fitting here. And not every project has to go through everything. As you know, as you're doing the project, sometimes you do instance interviews, you might not able to do a storyboard, but still you have to synthesize the findings from user interviews. You might be sending some user surveys. You might have to find those findings. So discovery is a place where you try to understand the whole problem and go with an open mind door. Solution part, this is most of the designers do, like the ideating, prototyping. We do the mid-fi, the high-fi. We do a minus playback. We do like reviews. We do the if like you have a design system, you might have to see if you are following the design system. And then comes the critiques with our own peers, with our own design management, and see if you're on the right track. And then comes the playback zero, where you showcase everything what we did so far with a bigger audience, right? So this is actually the place where you go into the iterative loop, right? You do a lot of ideation, prototyping, critics, either you back to the storyboard again, and then circle the feedback that keeps on expanding. Finally, the production. So we end up polishing our prototypes, close out the edge cases, error states, then we test it and we benchmark it. And then we give it to our development team for them to start developing it, right? The engineering team. And one other important thing here is that, as you see, it's not about the fit and finish. Then comes the Dutch review, what we call as a design and UX review, where we have like a standard set of or like reviewers from our from a different group, not the people who's working on the project, right? I'm working on networking services, and then I will have reviewers from other part of the project who comes and reviews my project. They have like a 23 set of criticals where they say, okay, the visual design is not up to the par. So they measure it based on some guidelines, like more like heuristics. They have their own guidelines, how they measure it and do the rating. And we'll also have an architect. We'll also have a front-end developer. We'll also have like a product team who reviews and rates the experience. And we finally come to a rating saying that it was A plus or A minus or B plus, B minus. So that way we know how what we design and what is being developed is really up to the mark, right? If we are really getting a D plus or D minus, C plus, C minus, then we have an opportunity to improve the experience, which means that other designers or other peers, other reviewers is not really liking the experience. So we have an opportunity now in the space to improve that experience so that when we get an A plus score, we know we can go confident to the market saying that, okay, we really built a proper experience solution, which our user might like. So that's also a critical phase we follow. With that, I'll try to close my session here saying that design isn't a solo act, right? So the innovation always needs friction. The friction is not from our application, from the people you work with, right? So the stakeholders we work with. So we need to get their feedback. We need to go with an open mindset. Like we need to get their feedback and how do we bring that diverse perspectives. So we are only as good as our three in a box. So that's a word we follow here. Three in a box is nothing but the engineering team, the product team, the design team work together. They are in a box. They are like together. They are not siloed, right? So we need technical experts to break it down to our level of understanding. We need the PMs to keep us honest, on track, what value we create, how it aligns to the organization strategy. We also work with other stakeholders like CSMs, tech sales, GTMs, marketing, right? To leverage these relationships that gets us end user feedback. So we are always collaborating. So I hope This is useful for you all guys, like understanding how big enterprises operate, and the enterprises comes up with their own systems. They have their own methodology, their framework, because sometimes small things can click. But if you want consistency, we need a framework, we need a playbook. That's what we follow here. Probably with that, I will open up to the floors. If you have any questions, I'm happy to
We are
answer.
open for questions. So if you have any question, you can put it in the Q&A box and then we'll answer them systematically. But Naveen, before we move forward, I wanted to congratulate you on this wonderful presentation. It was really, really insightful, even for me. I don't think we have spoken about design or UI UX design at such scale in I don't know, in any of our masterclass. So I think that's a very new experience for most of our learners and people in the audience. Thank you so much.
No, absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's important, right? So, I
Yeah.
mean, we have a lot of startups here, and we have some mid companies. When it comes to huge enterprise, we cannot just follow with our gut feeling. We need a framework. We need a proper methodology. So that's what we follow, so that the success is consistent. So we learn, and again, it's not a hard and fast framework. We keep iterating the framework based on our failures, based on our learning. So what we see here in 2 years, the framework could be changed a little bit because we might have learned a lot during the course of time and we keep changing. So that's how design evolves. Yeah.
Right. I think we have a bunch of questions already. So somebody is asking, when it comes to hiring designers at big companies like IBM, what qualities really make someone stand out?
Hmm. I mean, I'm glad this question is asked. Like this year, we were like two people we start up this year. Right now, our team is like 14-member team. So I'm building the whole India design studio for IBM Cloud. So we take designers in different levels, right? We want someone directly out of from college, so they bring some diverse perspectives. We need some entry level professionals who is like 2 3 years experience, who can do a lot of prototypes, who can do a lot of synthesis in the data, and then we want some senior designers who understands the problem really well, who can always zoom out and see what is the problem, and then we have some design managers who can do kind of the management process, how things operate. So the thing we look at it is like, what role we really want. Are we looking for a researcher role? Are we looking for a visual designer? Are we looking for a specific experience or interaction designer? So that's what we look into for. And we always look into how they can narrate their story. Like if you're looking for a senior designers, they come with like 8 to 10 years of experience. More than doing things, it's also important how you articulate things you're doing. That's important in a big industry like this. One thing is how do you execute things. The other thing is how do you articulate the things you execute. How do you make sure that you bring alignment to the team, right? So those are things we look at when hiring designers. How well you are articulating things, how well you are with your skills. That's what we look in the portfolio, right? When you look at the portfolio, are you able to deliver things in quality? And then the things you deliver in quality, are you able to articulate things? Those are things we try to look up for.
Right. Moving on to the next question, somebody is asking how much detail about research and user testing should I actually put in a case study as a beginner?
Hmm. Again, if you have to be really, really honest, right? So not every project you do, you might be end up doing research. Every project comes up with one timeline. So timing is really, really critical. Some project comes up with their own timeline where you have enough opportunity to do the research. Or sometimes you come up with a very short time. You might not have the velocity or the time to do all the research you can do. But with the given time frame, what you can do is important. So be very honest, be very realistic in what you put in your case study. So people know. So the reality, how things operate in the industry, right? So when you put in a case study as a beginner, when you're putting a real-time project, put reality what research you are able to do. You don't have to put a huge research, which we all know we cannot do it in the span of time where we have to deliver at the end of the day for the product to be in the business, right? So put the reality. If you do just user interviews, just put user interviews. If you did just a small comparative study, just put that alone. If you did a big project where you did both, try to put the both, right? Because when you talk about your case study, people know what you really did, what you didn't do it, and if you try to fake it, it will be easily known. And even the user testing is the same thing, right? So there are two places where you do user testing. So during the prototyping phase, you get a sponsor user or real user, you can test it. Sometimes big companies like IBM, even or even Google, we do not get our actual users, right? It's too hard to get users, but which everybody knows in the industry, right? So try to see whom you are testing with and be reality. Like if you're testing it with your peers, you're testing it with your stakeholders, or you're really testing with your users, or you're testing with delegate users, or like sponsor users. So put that information in reality. If you didn't do it, it's okay to accept. You didn't have time to do all those things, but you just did the design and delivered, and if the outcome is really good. If possible, if you have some, let's say, success metrics, try to add that as part of your testing.
Yeah, especially recruiters would figure that out about your honesty in your research
Exactly.
quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you evaluate if someone has strong problem-solving skills just from their portfolio? This is another question that we've got.
Again, we'll be honest, right? Today's market scenario, like you cannot judge a people based on their resume or just a portfolio. So that is like just the like judging a book based on their cover, right? So, but again, when there are like hundreds of portfolios or like resumes being submitted, we hardly can spend 5 to 10 minutes for a portfolio. So what we can understand from that portfolio, what we can understand from the resume is critical. So overfeeding or overputting information in the resume, it might be like too much the cognition for me, right? Or for any recruiters or any hiring managers. So keep it very crisp what you want, who you are, what you have done in the past few years, right? That's all we are going to look out for. How much experience you have. Do you have like a full design experience, or do you have like partly like engineering experience and then design experience? Where did you pivot from? And when we look at in the portfolio, we look for the story, right? In the case study, what you have in the portfolio, not just like more like a book driven. You don't put like I did a research, I did low fidelity, high fidelity testing. Make it more reality real. So what is the problem? What problem did you try to solve? Who are the people you talk to? So we always look for the journey. We always look for like how you structure your story, and if the story is very honest. If you try to put everything in a project, it might not be that real. So be honest, show the journey, show the narrative. That is really critical, because in the 5 to 10 minutes, that's all you're going to look at. We cannot read word by word. So we'll be glancing it at the journey, what we have gone through, what did you go through, how did you solve the problem, who are the people you reached out to, did you have a success metrics, is the product in the market right away. So those are the high level things we see it. And then when we do an interview, we get into detail. There we spend 1 hour time with you to go through the portfolio.
Right. Okay. Another question. I think I also have a sub question of this. Somebody is asking, I've noticed that not everyone buys into design thinking. Some people think that it slows things down. So how can I help them see the real value like it's actually important?
Yeah, it's very, very critical, right? So that's where like there are two companies. There are companies have the design maturity, and some companies doesn't have that level of maturity. And it's a maturity, design maturity. So when company has a design maturity at high level, which means that from the top management, from the CEO level or like from the SVP level, they champion UX, they know how design brings value to their product. So automatically the design thinking process gets importance. But when you are in a company, a small startup, or where you're a company where the design maturity is not at the executive level, it's still at the upline level, then you might have to keep on articulating things to the senior management how the design thinking or the process or the framework is really critical, because you can have one-off success, but if you want to have that success consistent, if you want to recreate the success again and again and again, you need a framework, right? And you need to keep improving the framework. So that information has to be imparted to them again and again. Like one success doesn't mean that the next thing you're building will be successful. So everything you learned in the first thing, you have to apply here, which means that you need to follow certain protocols, you need to follow certain process. So that's where the design thinking comes into play. So that's something we have to, unfortunately, we are in a place we might have to repeatedly say that. You are lucky if you are in the design in the company, if you are in the design maturity at high level. But again, if you are not there, still don't worry. Keep repeating the same thing again and again, keep telling the values. At some point, we'll definitely get there. Even
Another
after 50 years, we are still there. We have to tell our management that design is important.
Another thing which I personally feel is a subset of this question, which I wanted to know was how do you measure for impact, like impact created by design, especially with the C-suite, your CXOs and all of those people. Number crunching is definitely your
Yep.
tangible outcome. And while you're building the framework, while you're in the process of creating something, until unless it's rolled out to the users, you don't see very tangible outcomes very quickly. Once it's rolled out
Right.
to the user, a minor tweak will also give you
Mhm.
like a delta there. But before it's rolled out to the users, how do you sort of measure the impact of design that it would create? Um,
Yeah. Again, it's like always a problem. Like design can never be attributed to the revenue, right? So when the product revenue is there, how much is design contributing to revenue? Nobody knows that, right? You can never measure that. And what we do is that that's where I was explaining about the depth review. That's one thing we do, or the BIR, design intent review, we do. So before we release the product into the market, we try to do this depth review, which is like reviewers from other products or other business unit. I mean, design experts or design executives and architects, or like sometimes even sponsor users. They act as reviewers of the product before it is GA. They give scoring to it. We have like a measurement, like on a scale of 1 to 10 in visual design. Is it one bad, or is it 10, or is it 7? So we give the scoring, and we get a scoring like on multiple parts of it, like visual design or like interaction design, or like how the design system is being used, or the page level framework layouts. And then if it has some CLIs or Terraform, we capture metrics on each level and get a scoring. So that scoring gives us the confidence that the product is well designed. And once a product is released, then we have other metrics to capture. So we follow something. Earlier, we used to have the NPS, but we felt that NPS is not really giving very accurate feedback. So we moved on to something called as OSAT, where we try to get the actual users' feedback through either through the application or through service or through incidents, or there are multiple mechanisms where we get user feedback. We try to incorporate the user's feedback into the application, right? And then we also can do we follow with Amplitude, or somebody can follow like Google Analytics, where we do actual analytics, like how much usage is being done, what is the adoption, which part is being used well. So once it is released, we have multiple amplitude of information to capture the success. But before it release, we follow a certain things, like we have the playbacks where we bring alignment, making sure that everybody is clear, or if there is anybody feeling not right. And then we have a design intent review, which is just reviewing with our own design executives or like critiquing with our own people. And then we go for the depths, where we bring in multiple reviewers, they give us scoring to us. That's something we follow judiciously.
right. Um, Gopi is asking, in a growing service-based organization, what are some effective ways to incorporate and educate teams about the value of design? Are there any specific methods or practices you have found impactful in helping leadership and employees understand and embrace design as a core driver of growth?
Yeah. I mean, starting with the presentation, I started telling three things. That started with there, right? So at some part of my career, we wanted to educate or communicate to our management what is about design, right? So that's where we start with, right? So we have to tell them design is not a deliverable, it's a method. We have to tell them design is research, design is the cheapest way. So we give examples to them why design is cheapest way to get failure, right? Why design is research is critical. So I mean, coming from a service industry, it's very, very important. We keep on doing that. So what we do is that we sometimes have some workshops with them, right? We create some workshops with the senior management, a design thinking workshop, bring them to 4 hours, try to make them understand, give them some hands-on exercise. And during the course of the 4 hour course, we will make them understand the importance of what is design thinking, how it is going to be critical. Or we do a series of sessions, or we sometimes do a show and tell. Like sometimes we have to showcase how we implemented design thinking in a certain project, how it got success. We have to show that case study to the senior management. So there are multiple things we do. Sometimes we have to do, unfortunately, even though there is going to be like multiple designers in the team, they might recruit, but still we might have to keep telling this to again and again to our senior management why it is always critical, why it is always critical to improve. Because sometimes they expect us to do everything. So as a designer, I have to do the research, I have to do the fidelity prototype, I have to do the testing. We might also have to tell we need a proper researcher to do the research, and we have to show why research is critical to the organization. And we need to not tell the team like one person might not be able to do everything. There are like specialists doing certain things. There are generalists who can do multiple things. So those are things we have to keep repeatedly telling the people so that we can communicate to them what is design, how design can bring growth, and what is part of design, who are the designers who does what. You might have to clear a lot of PowerPoints and sessions to those things always.
Right. Next is a very interesting question. What skills can help me move from being a designer to a design leader?
And it's your mindset. Like I have a lot of my friends who wants to be still an IC. So if you want to be a really design leader, like and it's a skill. It's about your what do you say, like enthusiasm or like your motivation about who you want to be. Like if you really want to be a good design leader, follow some leaders, have some mentor relationship. I mean, wherever you go, it's really, really important that you have a good relationship with your design management. You talk to your design leaders, not just your immediate design leaders, have a skip level design leader meeting, or probably even with other industry, if you have some friends or if you have a network, talk to those people, how they operate, how they solve problems, how they manage team, how do they hiring people, right? So see how do they solve bigger problems. So sometimes it's important that you can learn things. Sometimes you talk to people and learn things. So have a lot of meetings, I would say, bring more networking. Uh, if you're early in your career, like, I mean, understand where you want to go. Sometimes you feel management is good, but sometimes some people will always know that they want to be an individual contributor. They can never take the management side of it. Again, you have a two career path. When you take individual contributor, doesn't mean that your career stagnates at some point. You can still go to a top level. You can directly report to a CX level. You can still take the management level where you can go to a VP level, GM level, or like a CP level based on industry. You can take all the levels, but start with talking to a skip level, two skip levels, or to other industry, how they're operating. If you have friends or build network, that way you can improve as your design leader.
Right. Somebody is asking, do you think AI is changing the way designers and design leaders work?
Absolutely. So the things is evolving very, very fast. I mean, I'll give an example. Previously, to do a research, to synthesize the data, we put at least a week time, right, to synthesize the data. Today, the AI is changing so fast. So the synthesizing data happens in a day, right? So we get insights from our raw data as fast as one day. And that insights are phenomenal, right? So the amount of insights it provides us, right? Even today, I saw like a lot of people are taking notes with Otter, right? So what we are speaking. So that's the way it's evolving. It's changing so fast. Even the way we put strategy around earlier, it used to be a lot of communication, lots of to back and forth. Today, we get a basic structure. A is giving us how our industry operates, and for this industry, what strategy is working, and what other industries are doing as a strategy. All this information is in the tip of your hand. So obviously, the A is changing the way we are working. Uh, but again, sometimes we need to have this human part to it. So we keep telling that. So sometimes we bring that part to this element, like how we can change certain things. But A is not going away. Like A is going to change the way or the speed of the work is going to be really, really fast. Things which were done in like 40 days is going to be done in 20 days, right? We are going to optimize our work very, very fast. Some of the research, we might have to reduce our research because the research is already done. We can just take that research information and implement into a project. So obviously it's changing the way we work.
Yep. Um, so I know that we're 5 minutes over 8. Are you comfortable going on and answering
Sure,
more?
sure. Yeah.
Somebody's asking, a lot of recruiters don't really understand my point, why I did what I did in my portfolio. What is the best way to explain my design process to them who might not fully understand thinking behind that design?
Right. It's two-way, right? So probably I would say, think from a perspective, right? Assume that it's not the fault of the recruiters, right? See if you can change your narrative, right? If you feel that they are not understanding the point you are trying to convey, try to see if you can put your narrative in a different way, right? So it's all, again, I keep repeating even to my teammates or my juniors, it's all about the narrative. It's not about the way you do the work. You execute your work, you finish your work. Now the important part is taking that work and showcasing to the management. Today you're talking about recruiters, but once you have your organization, it's still another case that you have to showcase your work to your management, right? Or you have to show the value of the work you have done while you have to design you have done. So unless until you have a proper narrative, so how you start things, how you end things, what you tell in the in between, in middle, it's all important. So even when I'm recruiting, sometimes I do like a stress test. Like they come up with a portfolio with a 1 hour of story. I'll ask them to tell the whole story in 7 minutes. If they're able to articulate the things in 5 or 7 minutes, the whole thing they did, which means that they know what they have done, right? If they can only tell in 1 hour, then that's not really I'm looking for. If they have done it judiciously, if they have done it out of their brain, like on day in and day out, they should be able to tell the story in 5 minutes or 20 minutes or 1 hour, right? So you should prepare yourself to have that narrative. Like for some recruiters, you might have to explain it in detail in 20 minutes. Some recruiters, 5 minutes is enough. Like you have to understand, you have to read the room, like what the recruiter is looking for, or ask for it. Just be open, like what are you looking for? What do you want me to explain in the portfolio? Which part is not clear? Which part you have to go detail? Or do you want to specifically talk certain things in the part of your portfolio? So two things, have your narrative clear, prepare it, keep repeating it again to multiple people. And if you're still feeling that the recruiter is not understanding it, ask the recruiter clearly upfront, what is that they're looking for? What do you want them to explain? So that sometimes clears the gap, right?
Somebody's asking, I know the tools, but is there a way I can learn design thinking? Uh, like a place or book or some YouTube channels you can recommend?
Right. So whatever I spoke today is like IBM's enterprise design thinking, which is free for everyone. So most of the slides I went through will be part of that education. It's like a 3 hour course. So once you finish it, Credly will even certify you that you have gone through it. But most of the things that which I went through, and you can even go to the next level where we call it as co-creator course, where so you can understand the nuances of it. And then we have the third level, which is kind of called as coach, where you have to do a project and a real-time project and showcase how to work. I'm not sure the coaches have free to everyone, but at least the practitioner course and the co-practitioner course is like kind of free for everyone. So you can start there. There are a lot of books. So start with Don Norman's book, or like there is like very, very basic, like everybody starts with that. You can have like how do you quantify measurable outcomes? Uh, uh, Few books there. And if you're still more interested in products, there are some podcasts which is really good. So if you're an iPhone user or like if you're a Spotify user, some really, really good podcast. I would recommend Lenny's podcast from product management standpoint. It's really good. Doesn't talk much about design, but still you understand the product, how the product works. And there are some design podcasts as well. So you learn all those things. And as I always keep telling, like keep your narrative clear. So where who you are, what you are, and when you talk to others about you, make sure that your narrative comes well.
Right. I think this you might have heard a lot going around these days, but everyone is thinking AI is going to take our jobs. Do you think AI can or in future might be capable of design thinking from end to end?
Yeah, even today it does, right? I know a friend who has his own consultancy, right? So he uses O3 to create a prompt. He uses, again, go to Anthropic to create a strategy, right? And then he goes to other AI tools like, let's say, Gamma or like Beautiful to create his beautiful decks. Like a lot of things AI is doing, which earlier was very, very manual or strenuous job. Today it is making your life much easier. That's how I put it. It's not going to take your jobs. So it might make your life much easier. You may do a lot of things in the given time. So things might go a little faster or new avenues will get created. So the same thing, like when internet was like the boom was there, so there were a lot of new industries created, right? The social media was created, which created a lot of new jobs So that can happen, but it might not kill the whole job, right? So the designer, what we are, might be a little bit different the way we operate in 5 years. That's how it was. Like the way we operated 15 years is not the way we are operating now, right? If I'm in the industry for almost 20 years, when we started UX, how we operated is not the same way we are operating now. We have evolved. And in 5 years, the evolution will be a little bit faster. But again, this might be your perspective. I mean, I might be wrong, but that's my perspective. It's not going to kill our job. It's going to make our job faster. It's going to make us change the way we work or do things a little bit different than what we're doing right now.
Right. Um, okay. Somebody is asking, do you think my design should make sense to the senior management? I know my design is working, but to step up the ladder, I need to connect it to business impact. How do I calculate it as business impact?
I mean, your design doesn't have to impress the upper management. Your design has to impress, or like your experience has to impress the users. So if you can communicate that user value to your upper management, that's all they want. If they see a value to it, or if they see a number to it, if they see a return on investment to it, that's what the business is looking for. So they don't want, like, unless until your business, whoever the executive is having a good design sense. Like if you're an Airbnb, the executive is Brian Chesky, who's a designer, right? If that's kind of a design executive, it's a different ballgame, right? But in most other cases, they just want numbers. If you can showcase your return on investment, so those are some of the metrics you have to definitely follow, right? So how is the adoption, right? How is the adoption increased from XX to YY, right? How a number of steps from 10 or is reduced to this much steps, so that the people are be able to do much more tasks than earlier. So those are some of the metrics which are really helpful. So your job doesn't end as you finish the design. Your job is like how the production is done. After the production, how you take it, fix, how you bring the feedback. Like that's why we moved from NPS to OSAT. OSAT is something where we get actual feedback from the users, voice feedback or written feedback. Do they like it? Do they don't like it? We also follow something called as UMAX, which is like user measurement for UX, which is like we have a score. Like every time, it's very, very, very simple. Like anytime you talk to a user or anytime you have a conversation with a user, at the end of the user interviews, we ask two simple questions. So we get a rating and we put that rating. It's a simple two questions. Do you like it? Or uh, is it useful for you? So we measure those two things. And during the interview, we have a protocol. We have to ensure that our users are kind of very comfortable with us, because we cannot, when we ask someone that, do you like my food, they always say yes, right? So that doesn't give a proper feedback to us. So we have to ensure that they are giving honest feedback to us. So we showcase that metrics as well to the upper management. Like here is my UMAX Lite score. So it has like 85% score, it has 90% score. Or the reality is 50% score, which is really bad, which means that I have to improve my design. So those are the ways we can impress our senior management, showcase these metrics, showcase some revenues, like based on these things, this much amount of time we reduce from our users, this is the revenue impact. So design alone doesn't impress them. So these metrics impress them much.
Lots of questions are directed
Yeah,
at impressing senior management.
yeah.
The
We come
audience
from
is
that. At the end of the
very
day, that's reality, right? So in big industries,
yeah.
so we have to make sure that we show that revenue, we show that measurable outcome, and how we show that is a process by itself. So again, this design thinking methodology helps us to show that again and again. Sometimes we end up creating these metrics, we end up creating this measurable outcome for so long. But if we have a framework how to create these outcomes, then it's easier the process. We design, we finish, we get that metrics, we showcase that metrics. That becomes easier for us too.
Andy is asking for a founding startup. I've been approached with a PRD and an idea of what they want to build. Could you suggest some cheap research methods that could help validate the direction that we are taking?
I mean, there's no shortcut, but I mean, in today's AI world, as I mentioned, right? So you can use whichever is comfortable for you. So there are a lot of language models. So as I mentioned, one of my friend like trying to use multiple agents to create a strategy, right? So he has his own playbook, how he creates the initial strategy to get the business, right? He might not have the budget or he might not have the time to go to do a real research. So he try, but at least he has uh, subscribed to some of these LLM models, right? Now these agents. So he predominantly uses O5 to create his own prompt. So just to create a prompt, he uses O5. And that prompt he put in Anthropic to create a strategy. And once he has a strategy, I have seen it, it's like a 10 page. Since I'm not talking about a free version of it, if you go for the paid version, it gives you a detailed strategy, what to do, how to do. Once that strategy is put in Gamma or Beautiful, it creates a deck for you, right? So things are evolving at a very rapid pace. So I wouldn't say this is a shortcut. This also involves a lot of work. You have to go through things. You have to read through the 10-page strategy. If it didn't work out, you have to change your prompt, or probably sometimes you have to validate with some of our peers who might think it might be not true. So might be that could be a little bit shortcut than the earlier way, but try to use this AI as much as you can to get your strategy, put a beautiful deck, get your narrative right, and try to pitch it to your investors or whoever it is.
Um, we'll just close this session with my question,
Sure.
which is
Yeah.
something that I love asking. Um, Naveen, if you were to redesign something as small as the as a safety pin and as big as the Delhi Metro railway system, what would you redesign?
I will never design as a safety pin. I mean, for 200 years, it's been the same.
It's been the
But
same.
yeah, so certain things doesn't have to change. You don't have to change for the sake of changing things. If the intent has been done, we don't have to change it. But Delhi Metro, absolutely, like or even
I'm
Bangalore
saying
Metro or
just
Chennai
in
Metro,
scale. I'm saying that
like the scale, right? I
it
would
would be
always go for a
as
scale.
small and as big also.
Yeah, my 18 years of industry, I come from enterprise. So that's why I don't have much experience with startups. I have did a small gig with startups, or I didn't have much gig with consultancy agencies, or I have not much experience with service industry. But I have a big experience with enterprise. So every product I have worked is always on scale, like big scale, right? It's not. I mean, we don't build for billions, but what we build is bringing billions. So that's a scale you're working for. So I love those kinds of challenges because these challenges comes up with a lot of bureaucracies, lots of I would say layers. So I like those things. So we have to go through these layers, talking to multiple people, bringing everybody into alignment. That is something interesting for me. I mean, I might be different from others. For some, it would be like they want some blue sky concepts. So, but when you go with enterprise, you might not get these blue sky concepts, right? You might have a narrowed focus, or you might have a narrow you have a stringent like structured way to work. So I kind of come from that world, so I like going in that path more than into the blue sky concepts.
Right. Thank you so much for doing with us Naveen. Thank you everyone who stuck around till the end of this session. We know it's late on a Friday night, but thank you so much. With that, I say good night and bye bye.
Thank you so much for having me, and good night and happy weekend. Take care. Bye bye.